All right, good morning, guys. Didn't we have an awesome time last night? Yeah, it was good. I have a catfish hangover today. You saw all those. I have a watermelon hangover. I have a problem, basically, is what I'm saying. So it was so good, so fun, and I was telling someone this morning, maybe we just need to do that every summer, make that an annual event. That would be fun. That'd be all right, yeah. We're going to get right into this morning, but before I introduce the Holders, I wanted to share just a little bit. Some of you have heard this story. You know how I was introduced to David and Karin. And I want to take about 2 minutes, and I want to share that story this morning. It was in 2018, and we were at home, and I was downstairs, and Karin was upstairs. Well, let me clarify. My wife, Karin, was upstairs. There are two Karens in this story. So, let me back up. This started really wrong. Karin Duggar and I were at home. And I was downstairs and she was upstairs, and she said, hey, you need to come up here and watch this hunting program. And she doesn't watch hunting programs generally. And she said, you need to come up here and watch this hunting program because these people, they aren't just killing stuff, they're teaching lessons about life. And they're also Christians. And so I think maybe this would be something that you would really like. So I come upstairs, I sit down on the couch, and sometimes we think that we have to be in church or that we have to be reading our Bibles for God to speak to us. That we can't just be in our regular environment, that we have to be somewhere that is a little more holy or a little more religious for God to speak to us. But I went upstairs, and I'm just painting the picture. So I go upstairs. I'm wearing pajama pants, no shirt, just so you can get the picture. I know it's an ugly one, but this is the environment that we're in. And I sit down on the couch, and I start watching Raised Hunting. And the Holy Spirit said to me, I want you to help David and Karin Holder write their books. Now, there's a couple of problems because I don't know David and Karin Holder, but I do know the voice of God. And so I knew that it was real. And I knew that I'm thinking to myself, okay, how's this going to work? And so I told my wife, Karin, I said, I really feel like God wants me to help the Holders write books. And she said, well, you don't know them. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And so the next day, I go on their website, and there's a contact button. And so I just send them an email, and I say, hey, my name's Larry Duggar, and I'm an author, and I'm a pastor, and I'm a hunter, and I live in Missouri. And have you guys ever thought about writing books? And if so, I'd be glad to help if I can. And so the next day, I get an email back from Karin, and she's like, we've thought about it. Could we have a phone conversation? And so that phone conversation led to me driving to Iowa and sitting down at their kitchen table, and 3 hours later, we had kind of mapped out this book that I thought was going to be really cool, and they made my job so easy with all of the great stories and life lessons that they teach so very well. And so I'm just thankful, that God knows who we need to be with, when we need to be with them for whatever reason that it is. And so for whatever reason, God tapped me, a guy who, I'm a nonfiction writer. I'm not a descriptive writer, but the Lord really helped me to develop that during this time. And so I'm just so thankful that God tapped me to be a part of their journey and a part of their life. And so thank you guys for including me in that. I really appreciate it. And so I know that they're going to have a lot to say today, and so let's make them welcome as they come this morning.
There you go.
We are not normal people. Or maybe we are normal people.
Maybe they figured that out already. You didn't have to tell them.
Thank you, Larry. That made me choke up, that introduction. And I think something that is really on my heart is the fact that I had been putting the seed in David's head for years upon years to write a book. And he just kept pushing me off and pushing me off. And I just felt like there was so many strong messages and stories that he can tell. David is an excellent storyteller. For any of you that have not seen Raised Hunting or read the books, he's a great storyteller. And we've lived a very interesting life. And we've lived a very interesting life because we've trusted God and we've taken some massive risks that were just, pack everything in our truck and drive to Montana and move there sight unseen. I mean, things of that nature that God led us to do. And so when Larry called, I don't answer every email immediately, okay? But something about Larry's email said, respond to him. And it was God. It wasn't something. It was God that said, this is the man that you want to talk to. And so that was very easy. And then it took a little twisting to get David to get on board. But he did, and I'm very glad he did. So
you're going to hear today that story's not exactly right. It took more than twisting. I mean, we're building TV shows, right? I have a career. Writing a book sounded like a nightmare to me. Number one, I don't read. So, I mean, I read very well. I just don't take the time to read. So does anyone even do that anymore? I'm asking them.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to convince me that yes, they do. And so it was quite the ordeal to get that to that point. I can tell you right now, there would absolutely be no way that those two books would be out if they wasn't for this man.
Right.
No
right.
way. I mean, he made it so easy for me to be able to tell him what I was saying or what I was thinking or what I wanted someone to learn from mistakes we've made. Or whether mistakes we've made in the woods, and turn that into something that someone else could get something out of it, maybe to avoid some of the issues we've had to deal with. And sometimes I think we help, and sometimes maybe we make it worse.
But
I'm just being honest.
One other little piece of information, and then I'll get out of here, is David and I have been together since a long, long time. I met him when I was 13.
That's AD.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
They
13 AD. BC. Anyway, we've been together a very long time, and he was a firefighter. He's a big burly man who a lot of people think he's a jerk before they talk to him because he's got muscles and he just has this look about him that used to be very intimidating. And quite frankly, he never really would access his feelings at home. And when you're a firefighter and you're doing first responding stuff, you see stuff and you deal with stuff in life that might make you kind of hard. Well, I kept working with him and hoping to encourage him, to bring Christ into his life and to open up. But what happened when Raised Hunting was born, Raised Hunting isn't about a hunting show. It has nothing to do with a deer. Nobody even talks to us about deer. I mean, they do after they say thank you for your message. But the fact is that God has taken someone and found a way to dig deep in his soul and pull out what God wants you to hear. And he's doing it through a hunting show. And it took us a long time to understand that, but every time we have a massive difficulty and we are thinking, do we continue on this journey or not? Somebody out there emails us and tells us how a message from the show or from the book changed their life and how God is working within them. And so that is our journey. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking. The women that are here tonight, we're going to have a great time tonight. I have put together what I think, or God has put together, because we've been wrestling about the message that I want to share, and he's winning. But anyway, I think we're going to have a great time tonight. And so I know we're all busy. I know that we have a lot going on in our lives. But if you could just say, hey, I'm taking this afternoon and I'm going to dedicate it to, just putting everything else away, let somebody else take care of the kids, let somebody else do dinner, and I am going to go be with Christ. And I'm going to be with women, and I'm going to be in community this evening. So please come. I would love to see you there. And please bring a friend, a mom, a sister, anyone. But it will be worth your time. So thank you.
I don't need that. They wired me. So as long as they can all hear me. Where does Kevin hide when this is all going on? Is he still in here? Or can he hear me wherever he is probably? Yeah. If someone will find him and tell Kevin, I do need the bow. All right? And they can just, Jackie, if you can just have him lay it right there. I don't need it like right now. I'm not going to shoot at you guys, I promise. Karin has kind of described a little bit of us. The one thing that I tried to get across last night, and I would love to explain it in a little more detail, is how redneck I really am. And what I mean by that is I'm standing up here today, and you have no idea how excited I am that I'm up here in Crocs with my socks on. But I didn't choose this. God did. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I had a chigger bite me right on the top of my foot, right where I tried to put my shoes on this morning, and they won't go on because it's so worn out. It's all bloody and everything. So I have to wear Crocs. She's like, no way, he's just making this up. But I promise you, I showed Larry the blood. I wanted him to actually see it before we started this. So I'm standing here in Crocs and socks, and I think this might get pretty heated. So they've told me that if I do this, now I'm in four-wheel drive. So I'm ready to go. So you guys better get ready, because when I talk to people, I do it in an interactive way. It's the only way I know to get across to people. Like Karin said, I am not, for those of you that maybe your first time in church, maybe your first time here, or maybe you're just new, or maybe you still aren't sure where you're coming from or what you're doing. Perfect, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. That's me. That's who I was. Still sometimes who I am today. I still fight with God. I just told Kevin about it outside. I still argue. I don't understand why he created a chigger. There's no point. The mosquito feeds the bat and all this other stuff, but the chigger feeds who? Nobody that I know of. So there's certain things that just, I don't get it. So that's how it comes across. Well, as we come here today, and I thought, I've been thinking about how is I going to try to relate this to someone so that they could understand that I don't care where you are in your walk in your faith with God, or whether it's the very first time, whether you still aren't sure, whether you accidentally ended up here, or you came here because you thought we were going to talk about white-tailed deer and turkeys, and now it'd be rude if you just got up and walked out right now, because I would point it out. I would tell you, where are you going? If someone comes in late, I'll let you know. We'll all know who they were. So my point is, that's just how I am and who I am. And so it's very easy. People ask, are you afraid of talking to crowds? I'm not, because I am who I am. I'm not here to hide anything. And I can tell you right now, I did not always walk with the faith that I'm standing next to Larry as we're singing, and I hear him talking to God, and I'm going, man, that's awesome. That's awesome to see someone feel that, talk, have that. And that's why he's a pastor, because he's able to do that. I'm not able to do that. Does that make me any less of a person? Absolutely not. Okay, so here we go now, though, because all you guys that I saw shooting yesterday can't answer my questions, all right, because we're going to start with real tough trivia. What am I holding? Someone tell me what I'm holding there. I heard a couple people, what? Oh, an arrow? Not really. It's not even a shaft yet. What am I holding here? No, it's just a piece of carbon. It's really nothing, and it's not an arrow because it doesn't have what? Well, I heard one. Doesn't have blades, doesn't have what else? Doesn't have an insert, doesn't have a knock, what else? Fletchings or vanes, right? Doesn't have a tip on it. Once we start to get to that point, now it becomes an arrow, right? Well, it just hit me, and that's because being the hunter that I am, that's how I think. I put all these things into kindergarten terms for myself so that I can get it. And I started to think about an arrow. And I was like, how does an arrow have anything to do with my faith or with my walk with God? And man, it just stands out. So I started to look, I just said, let's just go through the components. It's really simple, right? So the first thing that I have to have is, what did you guys say this was? If I start to take this carbon, weave it into something that is a circle, well, let me back up, because now I'm going to give you a little piece of trivia. So tell me, I got a broken one here, and the only reason I have it here, so can you guys see that? Just a small piece. How many holes are in that? Huh? No, is there one or two? I got half the room says one, half said two, right? I don't know the answer to that. I just want to know if you guys did, but I don't know. I just want to know how many holes are in an arrow. Straw, right? I mean, I've heard one, I've heard two. I'm not here to tell you that. Talk to him, he'll tell you. All right, so we start to put this arrow together, though, to make something. And I believe someone over here said we needed an insert, right? What would the insert represent? Does everyone that's not a hunter know what an insert is? Insert's this piece that goes into the end of the arrow, and that's going to allow me to do what? To put something in there. So I think the insert is my heart. Because if my heart's not in this, then I can't add anything to it. Can't connect it, right? But what am I trying to connect? Tip of some sort. And if we get over here to a hunting one instead of the one I have here, what do we got there? What is that specifically? Broadhead. How many blades on that one? Can you guys see that down there? 4 of them, right? So could that represent the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, maybe the Bible? All those things that I need to let in my heart in order for this to begin to do what I need it to do. Make sense so far? Because trust me, it gets really weird here in just a minute because it's going to really make a lot of sense. Because that insert, now my heart is attached to what someone said it over here a minute ago when it was just this, is what? It's in this. What did someone say that was? The shaft. The shaft is my soul. Man, without that, there's nothing, right? If my soul doesn't feel this, if I don't have my heart in this, if my heart and soul aren't part of this where I can let things in, then this can never be a good arrow. It won't even be an arrow. It'll just be, because we still haven't gotten to the part that we really need. And I'm getting there. Because when we get down here, now we get to what I consider the most important part. What do you think that this would be then? We know what that part of an arrow is? Fletchings, veins, right? To me, that's the church. Because if you think about it, if I don't have the veins, the church is what wraps around this arrow, and what's it make it do? Fly straight, fly true. If I take one off, where does the arrow go? Left or right, all over the place? Oh my gosh, all of a sudden I realize I got to have all this around me. Now the one that's missing is what? What can you put underneath the veins for those of you that are hunters? You see a lot of people do it. They'll wrap it around the arrow before they put those veins on there. Does anyone know what that's called? Cresting or a wrap, right? Does everyone know what that is? And we can go back all the way to the Robin Hood times where it came from. And that was what they did, and you guys have seen the Robin Hood movies. I don't care if it's the new one or the old ones. They'll show you that the back of those arrows were painted. Okay, and they would paint different markings on there. That was so that you would know if your neighbor or if you got shot, who shot you. Basically, it's a signature on your arrow. That's all that it is. So that's what they would do. They would mark these arrows so that everyone knew Robin Hood shot me, so to speak. Okay? I look at that as the different types of churches. Because honestly, when we really get down to it, does it matter? It doesn't, does it? I see there's Presbyterian, there is Baptist, there is the family church, there's Lutheran, there's all these different denominations. Nobody's wrong, are they? No, we're all working for the same thing, right? We're all going the same way. How we get there, I won't have the same belief as you. Me and you are going to disagree on something. Me and you are going to disagree on something, but if we understand that at the end of the day we're all going in the same direction, then who cares? I don't believe God's up there going, you know what? If you're a Lutheran, step aside. All the rest of you are coming up here. Just not going to work like that, right? I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out one day. But right now, I believe that it all works together. And I think I've seen churches, Karin and I used to attend a church in Montana that shared 2 different denominations. They would go before us, then we would have service after them, and sometimes we would swap pastors because one couldn't be there. Didn't seem to affect anybody. We all got the same message. So it works. But now we're to the end of the arrow. What's the very back of that arrow? Knock. And what's the knock do? It clips it onto the string. If Jesus is the string, then what would that knock be? That knock would be the foundation of what this whole thing needs. That's where I meet Jesus, is at the string. And if the string represents Jesus, then the whole bow is God. And what does Jesus do? Once we're clipped on there, he's not doing it for us, is he? Because once he sends us downrange, he's given us all the components we need to fly where he needs us to fly. Everything's there. All we got to do is do it. But do we? Do we even know we're doing it? Because now's when the arrow's simple. To me, that was like the easiest thing that I could ever come up with. But now I'm going to get to the hard part, because I'm going to read you an email. Karin mentioned that these emails come in. And I would love to sit here and tell you guys that we created this great television show about hunting, because when I got into it, that is what I wanted to do. I still want to do that. I believe that we need to get that message out there and let people know that hunting's okay, that hunting is needed. We are the best conservation tool this planet has ever seen. And what I mean by that is you find any other way that you can take animals out and keep the herd at check, and we pay you to do it. We'll pay you to do it, so it doesn't cost taxpayers any money. We'll do it for you, and we're effective. We need hunters, but we also need Christians. And the same thing, you just contributed dollars, maybe even dollars that you don't have. We'll pay you to do it. We will ask to be a part of this. Thing is, I was asking for 25, 30 years probably and had no clue that I was doing it. No idea that God was trying to put me on some path where eventually I would meet Larry Duggar, or that I would eventually listen to my wife. I had no idea. Thank God she's patient, because she just kept on persistently, think about this, think about this. But I do want to read this to you, and then I want to explain where this has come from for me, because I believe that it. So see, she's leaving. I just hit and. No, I'm kidding. I won't make fun of people. That's just wrong. All right, so bear with me. This is the only thing that I got to read. Other than that, I don't sit down and read anything. I want you guys to be able to be a part of this. And I don't have my glasses on me, so just hang in there. And it's not long. And I can't tell you who it's from, because that would be illegal, and then I would go to jail. But this is from a gentleman that wrote us several years ago, and I had responded to him just in kind of the same thing. It wasn't about hunting, it was about his family. And so he wrote this to me, and this was about a week ago, maybe a little more. He said, "Dear David, I wrote you a little time back. I told you my dad passed and how much my wife enjoys watching your TV show. I think it's because your show is different than other hunting shows." Right? We've all heard, we've heard Larry describe that way. Kevin has explained that. Karin mentioned that. But then he goes into a place that I was like, I have to talk about this. I have to do something about this. He says, "Your TV show, I think, is because your show is different than other hunting shows. She is a believer in God. I guess I'm a little different than her. I don't have as much faith. It's not that I don't believe, it's just hard to explain." I'll come back there in just a minute. "This year I did pray that after my dad had his stroke, God would take him. And a day later, he passed on a Sunday. I went out to check his deer stand, and found the stand that he sat in for 65 years had a 100-year-old pine fall on it. My plan that morning was to sit in it. The bottom was gone. I guess there must be a reason. And yesterday my boss called me and was crying. His wife was told she has breast cancer. I guess my email was to tell you today, I sat down after a long day of work and found myself watching your TV show. Season 5, episode 13. Your story about your friend and why you have one pink arrow. I'm not sure why things are the way they are, but I will be ordering a pink arrow wrap tomorrow. I just wanted to share that with you. For now, thanks. I'm not sure if you're still making shows because I'm always slow and behind. But whatever you do, don't stop." And I read that, and where in there is that guy telling me, nice deer? Where is he telling me, man, thank you guys for showing me that I got to go to New Mexico on an elk hunt, or go to Colorado, or go do something? Not even close. But the part that gets to me the most there is when he says, my wife's a believer in God. I'm not at the same place. but it's hard to explain. And I'm not going to read you the whole email that I sent back to the gentleman, but I am going to talk about it this morning, because the email that I basically sent back to him was, you would have no idea how well I understand that. I've been there, still there, in some regards, and everyone else is there. And here's what I guess I'm referring to, is that in this walk, and I will admit, Karin and Larry are both right. In the last, I guess, 7 years now we've been doing raised hunting. All of a sudden I realized, the first 2 years, man, we were just going as hard as we could building shows. But it was probably the second or third episode. What episode did Brothers air? Like 5 or 6 in the first year, Karin? I don't know. Anyhow, it's very quickly. And to give you an idea of how this works, we put together an episode, okay? So everyone always wants to know, and I'm going to give you a little background on it at the same time. Everyone wants to know, how does a TV episode get put together? For us, it's like this. We go hunting somewhere, and then what would happen is I would come back and I would look at the hunt of what it was. What did we learn from the hunt? What was going on there? And then the next thing that I would do is I would try to figure out, where did we have something in life that kind of pertained to that? I try to piece those two things together, and then we would go out and film elements of whatever the conversation was or whatever the situation was of the real life stuff, bring that in, put that in around the hunt, and then it would all work together. And that's how we would do it. When it's all said and done, they send it to me. When they send it to me, I sit down and I try to narrate it. And when we sat down to do this, this will tell you, we had no idea that I was going to voice over it. We all tried it at one point, each person, Karin, Warren, Easton, and myself. And then it took us, maybe 2 shows to figure out, Dad has it. Dad needs to be the one doing it. It just fit when I would talk about it. And so that's how we ended up there. So anyhow, we're working on a show that's called Brothers. It's about my 2 boys, about them hunting together. It's about them fighting. Like some of the kids I saw yesterday, I saw one kid pop the other one in the head with a bouncy ball, and he hit the ground, and the other kid took off running because he was sure he was in trouble, until the other one got back up, and now he's chasing after him. Now it's all good. And the next thing I know, one of them had a watermelon seed up the other one's nose, and they were doing good. And life was good, right? That's my boys. But when they start to get older, then sometimes those fights get a little more serious. And they're mad at each other. And Karin and I recognized one day that they were really, really mad at each other, but when they hunted together, it all went away. It just fit. What most people didn't know, and at that time, nobody across the country knew it other than people that were my close friend, was that I had a best friend like that one time. And he was my brother. And when I was 20 years old, my brother committed suicide. And I lost not only my brother because he was so much older than me, I lost a hero. I lost the one that got me involved at hunting. My dad didn't get me involved. My dad was just one that would go along. My brother was into it. He's the one that handed me my first bow. It was his old one. He's the one that took me the first time. And even though he did a lot of things that were wrong and illegal and stuff like that, he got those bases down for me. And so losing him was just devastating to a kid at 20 years old. And so here I was trying to figure out what was going on. Thank God, God had put Karin in my life, because she became the one that I leaned on. She became my hero at that time. I needed something to hang on to. So she went with me because I had to move. I left Virginia. We grew up in Virginia, and I had to get away because it was so, I could see myself ended up doing the same thing as my brother. And I wasn't willing to do that. And I could recognize that. And again, I would love to tell you guys, that's when I found God. But I'm too thick-skulled to get it yet. I don't know why. I just know that I can't stay there. But God grabbed me and said, just let's move you away from all this. No big deal. Raised hunting's not born. This is 20 years ago. And so now I become a firefighter. And then like Karin said, I saw some things that most of you I hope to God none of you ever see. I've seen kids pass away. I've seen parents that, I can't say they killed them, but in my opinion, they did, because they weren't there for them. I've seen people hurt in ways you can't even imagine. A lot of it, not even painful ways. I'm talking drug use, and watch someone that has no idea who they are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then turn around and 2 seconds later, they're sound asleep standing on their feet. I've seen people that were quadriplegics and did nothing but, still cussing the police department, still mad at the fire department for showing up, still just mad at the world. I've just seen a lot of ugly stuff. That was just another stepping stone that ended up with Karin and I going to Montana. We're still together. It's her and I and then all the way back to Iowa. And then one day I sit down and I'm telling her, I really feel like I have something to say. Again, her little tiny statement. I mean, I'm starting now at this point. We've hit, like, I don't want to say rock bottom, but real close to rock bottom in our marriage. And we're about to call it quits. And she convinces me that we need to go to church. And I can tell you right now, so if you're sitting out there and you're the guy that happens to be here today because you're hoping to hear a deer story, but you go to church on Easter, maybe Christmas, or there's a girl you really like, or if you're a girl and there's a guy you really like, you go, that was me. I would go once in a while. But I also could explain to this gentleman, he says I believe in God, it's just hard to explain. That's where I was. I believed in God. It wasn't like I believed that the earth just boom and then there it was and all this cool stuff. No way. Absolutely no way. But I didn't have the same feelings that Karin had, didn't have the same understanding, didn't have the same education behind the Bible and things like that she did. So she tells me we need to go. And I'm like, man, I've been there and it just doesn't feel comfortable. But we walk into that church that day and the only thing that I can tell you is that's the only time in my life that I've ever felt like I won the lottery. Sat down in that church that day and I was like, holy cow, how does it feel like that? This is not what I remember. This is not the church that I went to. And it was nothing like this. This is even better. But it definitely was something for me. It still, though, did not turn me into, now we started going to church. I wanted to go to church. I read the entire Bible. I wanted to read it. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand a little more so that I could see what I was missing. And so I started reading it and things like that, but then some of it was just more confusing for me. And so I kept fighting with it and things like that, but at the same time, it was working. I was starting to think a little differently. I was starting to act a little differently. I was starting to do things a little differently. Maybe now it wasn't so much about me. It was about my family. It was about going and doing things for friends. The term that I love to live by is I want to be that person that someone says, at 2 a.m, I can call him and he'll be here. And with that, I believe that somewhere along the line, God is checking those things as well. Okay, he may check the fact that, have you been to church? Like Larry said a few minutes ago, maybe all the time that where we get closest to God, where we do as much spending time with God is not in church. Maybe it's in a tree stand. Maybe it's on the lake. I think he hears us. I think the main place that he wants to know that he got into is into the soul. Because if you never go to church, but God's in your soul, if Jesus is walking with you, I believe that you're going to get to stand in the same place that all of us are going to get to stand someday and be judged. He's the only one that's going to matter. Everyone else out there, because I've had people tell me that, how dare you be able to get to go out here and speak like this when you don't go to church? You're not a pastor. You're not a preacher. You don't know the scriptures like other people do. I've had someone question that. Sorry, I'm David Holder. This is who I am. I don't know why God asked me to do this, but I'm doing what he asked me to do. That's the difference, is I believe that I understand or I'm listening, because even if I don't understand, I'll still do it. I'll still come here. I don't care if I understand why. Is there anyone out there that their life is going to be changed today because I'm here? I don't have a clue. I sure hope so. Or maybe it's simply that we meet you here today and you hear what I'm saying, and someone that you know is the one that you're able to tell them, go check this out online. Because this guy's not telling you that he went to church, he went to seminary school, he learned this, he knows the Bible back and forward. I mean, the verses, he can really quote them and he can preach to us. And then next thing we knew, we were all standing in the church and we wanted to be a part of what he's doing. I'll probably never have that effect. And I don't expect to. But I'll guarantee you there's someone out there like me that doesn't know exactly what they want to do in life, don't understand why their life is so bad or why it's so good. And we only ask when it's bad. When it's good, we just go on. But then one day you hit that moment when you're like, what am I supposed to do now? And that's when you find out whether you believe in God or not. Because if you're the one that doesn't say a word, if you're the one that just keeps on, oh, it's just bad, just goes on. But the moment that you open your mouth, and you start talking to someone that isn't there, that you physically can't see, your wife's not sitting beside you, your husband's not there, your kids aren't there, and you're going, what am I going to do with my life? And how do I fix this? And how do I change this? You believe in God. You just didn't know it. And that was me. And then all of a sudden you start putting a symbol or a feeling behind it. You know, it's not a face. It's I can't even explain it. I'm just like him. I can't explain it. And what I want to tell that gentleman is you don't need to explain it to me. It's there, buddy. If you can write an email to a guy you don't know and tell him I believe in God, but I just can't explain it, you don't need to explain anything else to me. Not a thing. So my point for coming up here today, or my point for talking to you guys today, is to let you know that I don't care where you are in your life. I don't care that if you just got out of prison. I don't care if you're in the middle of a divorce, that you're the one that cheated on someone that caused the marriage to fall apart, whether you stole money, whether you just, like I said, you got out of prison for whatever. God's still there. He's still going to accept you. Okay, now I'm not telling you that means we go out and do whatever we want to do and then just apologize. That's not it at all. Because I also guarantee you, he knows what you're doing when no one's looking. That's what I love about hunters. That's what I've tried to just preach to my kids. And I hate the word preaching. Sorry, Larry, I hate to offend you. I don't like the word preaching because I've always felt like that meant I was telling you had to go do something. But I have tried to explain to my kids, what you do when no one's looking is the person that I want to be around. That's who hunters are. They're in trees, they're in the woods, they're out there when there's fences, there's all kinds of laws, and no one knows. They got guns in their hand. No one knows what they're doing. You could do anything you wanted to, but you don't. You don't because you don't allow yourself to do it. There's boundary lines, there's things that tell you can do it. You could shoot 10 deer, but you don't. You shoot one. You find the one that you can't find. You spend extra days, you call your buddies, you got another tag, another deer standing right there, shoot it. But you don't. That's the person I want walking behind me in New York City, because I don't have to look over my shoulder and wonder if they're going to stab me in the back and take my wallet. Because they understand the boundaries. They understand the rules, the laws. They know who they are. Doesn't matter whether they were at church that week. As much as he needs them to come and we want them to come, and they'll get more of this by coming, it really doesn't matter if you'll let God into your soul. Let him get inside and understand where you are, who you are. He already knows. He already knows how you feel. That's why I just, the fact that I admit it, that I fight with him about a chigger, is because you are too. Just something else, right? You're like, what is this for? You just don't maybe, make a full argument. I mean, me and him, God, all right, we're serious now, right? And I'm expecting one day, I built it because frogs eat it or something like that, because there needs to be an explanation and there's not. It really, if you don't think chiggers bother me, I'm telling you, if you could see my legs right now, you'd understand why. So that is my point for today, is I want you guys to understand that I love raised hunting. I love my wife and my family. I had no idea that the good Lord was putting me on a journey 7 years ago that would eventually bring me to Lebanon, Missouri. Never dreamed it, never thought about it, wasn't planning on it. Never thought that I would write a book with a co-author that was a pastor. Never thought that someone would accuse me 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in Iowa of being a preacher. I'm at my own camps where I teach kids about hunting, and the kids said to me, you're just like a preacher. And now my next question was, explain yourself. What does that mean? And they were just saying, as Karin mentioned, God gave me the gift to tell stories. But and so as I tell stories, I seem like sometimes, if you guys can't tell, I get pretty passionate about what I believe in. And that doesn't mean that I'm trying to tell anyone that they got to do it my way. That is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to get across here today, is you don't have to do it my way. You don't have to do it Mr. Duggar's way. You do have to do it the way God has asked us to do it. But how you do that here is yours. How you do it in your head is yours. It's all the same. At the end of the day, if we think of it like an arrow, it could end up being, there's all kinds of arrows, right? There's bow fishing arrows that are bigger. There's different things in here. And because the part of it where it makes it so different is the part that I haven't talked about yet. Because there's one thing left that this arrow has to be perfect, that makes it perfect. Does anyone know what that is? And if you're not a hunter, you won't know it. What's the one thing that you got to make sure that it's going to come out of that bow correctly? The length has something to do with it, but there's another one. It has to do with me bending this. The spine. The spine of an arrow. Because most people, do you guys realize, and you can't see this, and this is what I love because this is exactly, if you can't see it happen, did it really? Dang right it did. Because if I was to tell you that when this arrow is launched out of that bow, that it bends like this every single time, you would look at me like, no, it isn't. It's straight, and it shoots straight. That's what it's intended to do. But this arrow will actually bend just like this, and if you watch it in slow motion, it does it every single time. And then it straightens back out and goes where it's supposed to. I don't hear God talking to me sometimes. I don't see him talking to me. He doesn't sit down in that chair, and he's yet to show up when I'm picking chiggers off of me. But I do believe that he's the one, thanks to her, thanks to my life, thanks for him being that patient and putting these little tiny things in front of me, I now realize that it isn't me leading myself through life. There's someone else or something else, something bigger than I can understand. And I'm okay with admitting that. That's why I can't explain that to him, and I'll never even try. All that I can tell him is don't ever give up, because here's what's going to eventually happen. And Larry's heard me say this before, is you and you and you and you could all today have a different response of who I am and who the person sitting next to you are. The person sitting next to you might be bigger. You might think of them as lazy. The person next to you might be a lot smaller. You might think of them as weak. The person sitting next to you might have a hat on. Well, I don't like that kind of hat, or I love that hat. I mean, sometimes it's how good, I really like the smell of that person that just walked by. All that's perception of us as people. Really doesn't matter. What's going to matter, and the only thing that's going to matter, is that one day you and I will be in that line as the way I envision it. And we'll be standing there, and these gates are open, and we're going to get to walk through there. Hopefully. But when we get there, when you get to the gate, it's your turn. I'm going to walk up there, and I'm going to say, here you go. I don't know if I did it right, but here's what I did. He's already going to know what I did, and I'll hand him this, and I'll tell him, I'll say, look, this is how I live my life. I've had a cross in my pocket and my bow in my hand. Did I do it okay? And I'll walk away. And that's where I'll be judged. That's the only place I'll be judged. So guys, I'm not telling you that I'm perfect. I'm not telling you that the person sitting next to you is perfect, because they aren't. But what I am telling you is that whoever you are, trust in the Lord. And then that day when you stand there, present him who you are. Thank you.